Hey, in today's video, we're exploring how keeping a positive attitude helps with stress. Do you think you could use that? If you're juggling parenting, work, all of the demands that are required from your daily life, then you've probably encountered some stress. Stick with me to the end of the video. I've got a free gift for you that's going to help a lot. Let's dive in. Hey, if we haven't met yet, I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins. I'm a professional psychologist specializing in positivity. Now, we've all heard, just think positive from those motivational speakers or gurus on the stage. We're getting past that into the science behind positivity and what it actually means. For me, it's the operating instructions for the equipment of your own mind. And either you drive your thoughts or your thoughts drive you. The first thing that I'm going to share with you today is the difference between thoughts and circumstances. After that, we'll get into what is the source of your stress. We'll discuss how a positive attitude is actually what creates your energy to move forward, and then bring it home with a model that actually works. So first, what is the difference between a thought and a circumstance? Come back with me about 5 or 6 years when I'm in a coaching program. This is a high-touch, high-ticket coaching program with other entrepreneurs where we were learning about sales and influence and some of the skills that are necessary to be a positivity psychologist. There's maybe 24 of us in the room. And the time came for the focus to be on Dr. Paul. And I remember sitting there in the room and I had my notes and I was going through everything that I wanted to improve about my business models and my sales processes and everything else that I was trying to do for my own business. And my coach, Jody Moore, who is brilliant and had already built a lot of what I wanted to create, was listening. I spent, 5-10 minutes going through my outline and saying, okay, so here's what's going on in my business. Well, at the end of that, Jody says this, and she's standing over there on the side. She's got her arms folded and she's looking very wise. But here's what she said. She said, well, that's a thought. And I'm like, Jody, you're not listening to me. I'm telling you what's actually going on in my business. But her response was, that's a thought. That alone was probably worth the price of admission, and it wasn't a small price. That alone. Why? Because it's so important for us to distinguish between thoughts and circumstances. Circumstances are what's actually going on. It is what it is. And circumstances can be reported as a news item. You're watching the news and it says 14 people crossed the street and went into that building. You'd never hear that on the news, but that's the point. It's just the data. It's just the facts. Jody's reaction to me was so powerful because I was saying, I'm having a hard time with this, and this part of my business is not doing very well. That's a story. That's a thought. If I would have said, this part of my business is producing these particular results, that would be the circumstance. I said, it's not going very well. That's a story. That's a judgment. That's an evaluation. That's a narrative that's going on in my head about the facts. The biggest thing that you can do right out of the front is to distinguish between thoughts and circumstances. Thoughts are simply the data. Here's another example. My husband said something mean to me. I've heard that from a lot of clients. Okay, that's not a circumstance. That's a story. My husband said, you are a fat pig. No, I'm making that up. But that's the data. He said these words. What I interpret about that, it was rude, it was mean, it was playful, it was a joke. All of that's a story. It's our story that drives our feelings, our emotional energy. That's why it's so important to distinguish. Two people can experience exactly the same circumstance and have polar opposite reactions to it. Like the phrase that and I know that's kind of a silly example, but you are a fat pig. That could be said, and one person would laugh their head off, and the other person would cry their eyes out. Well, why? It's exactly the same circumstance, because of the story that we have. Now, you might argue, yeah, but he meant it in a mean way. You don't know that. That also is a story. Have you noticed we don't know what other people think? Oh, we claim to, but we don't know. We're not inside of their head. Even they don't know what they think a lot of times. So distinguishing between thoughts and circumstances, that's the first step. Hopefully, as I'm describing this, the next piece of this makes sense, because however we interpret the data is what determines our emotional response to it. It's what sets our emotional energy. So having a positive attitude is not about ignoring the data. It's not about discounting or diminishing the pain that we feel. It's really about becoming more aware of the stories or the narratives we're creating about our circumstances, because those stories are what drive our emotional energy. When we feel stress, it's because of what we think. Let me say that again. When we feel stress, it's because of what we think. The error that we make is that we attribute our feelings to our circumstances. And we miss that piece about how we're creating a story inside of our mind, a narrative, an interpretation. And that's what drives our emotional life. Becoming aware of this puts us back in a position of choice. And until we see it as a choice, it's not. We're going to roll with whatever our programming is. Seeing it is what creates the space for us to actually exercise choice and start steering it in a direction that actually helps us out. I told you earlier that I have a free gift for you at the end, but I can't wait till the end. Can I just give it to you right now? It's a mini book. Isn't it cute? The title of this is Portable Positivity. I told you earlier, it's not enough to just tout the just think positive. I think we need to understand the science behind it. And that's what I've put into this mini book. I'm going to give you a free digital download of this mini book. Go to the URL on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/mini, M-I-N-I, and that's doctor spelled with a D-R, drpauljenkins.com/mini. I will put this right in your hands. What this does is breaks down the science behind what I'm explaining to you. And let's do a quick little recap. Circumstances are neutral. When I say they're neutral, I don't mean that they're easy or painless. They might be very difficult and painful, but I mean neutral in that it could always be better, it could always be worse. Our story about those circumstances, not neutral. In fact, usually it's very emotionally charged. As we interpret and put a story around our circumstances, it becomes very emotionally charged. That emotional energy is what we know as feelings. It's our feelings that determine how we show up, how we react, what we do. And then what we do is what creates our results. So if we want different results, where are we going to start? Let's distinguish between our circumstances and our thoughts. And let's start to drive those thoughts in a direction that actually serves us better than whatever it is we were doing before. Knowing the science behind it is huge. And that's why I want to give you that gift. drpauljenkins.com/mini, and I will walk you through that model. So what does a positive attitude have to do with stress? It has everything to do with it. That's what changes our emotional energy. And it's important to recognize that, because what's coming next is unknown. I mean, think about it. How are you doing next week? You don't know. Oh, you've got predictions. You've got expectations. You may even have plans. And you've got something to do with it. Please don't forget that part. But what's coming doesn't even exist yet. Some of the stress that we feel comes from the predictions that we have. I invite you to notice that. So since you don't know, what if you were to choose a different position, also known as attitude? I've done other videos completely about attitude, and it's all about position. This is something that I learned from my pilot son, who told me that attitude is an aviation term. And at first I'm like, oh, you mean altitude, right? Like the psychologist is going to correct the pilot? He says, no, it's attitude. Attitude is the position of that plane relative to the ground or the horizon. And can you see that a nose down attitude shoots us right into the hard stuff? That's true in psychology. Our attitude matters, our position about what is to be. Check this out. How do you feel when you imagine or predict or expect or fully anticipate that what's coming is even worse than what we already have? How do we feel? That, my friends, is anxiety. There's 3 decades of clinical experience in a nutshell. That's how we define it. When we imagine that what's coming is worse, we're going to feel fear, apprehension, anxiety. How do we feel when we imagine or predict or expect or fully anticipate that what's coming is even better than what we've already got? How do we feel? That is hope. Feeling stress, what is that from? It's from the narratives. It's from understanding how to operate the equipment of our own mind. And when we expect or take a position or attitude that what's coming is even better, and then we get busy applying our energy toward making it so, we experience hope. And hope is the #1 preventative factor for suicide. We know this because hopelessness is the #1 risk factor. We're losing far too many people unnecessarily. Where is it in your life that you're feeling hopeless or stressed? I invite you to learn more about how to operate the equipment of your own mind. Your life gets better, but who else? Who else in your life needs you to show up with a whole different energy? You see how this ripples out to everyone that we touch or lead in any level of responsibility. Okay, go grab that free gift. I'm going to give you a free digital download of my mini book, Portable Positivity. Just go to drpauljenkins.com/mini, and I'll put it right in your inbox. Thanks for watching.